Right, Manchester United remain in talks with Bayern Munich over the signings of right-back Noussair Mazraoui and centre-back Matthias de Ligt. A gap in valuation exists between what Bayern want for the players and what United are prepared to pay. The season is not too far away now, Dan. We've got the Community Shield on the weekend. How desperately do Man United need these two defenders?
Well, I mean, it feels like deja vu once again for Manchester United because over the weekend they lost to Liverpool 3-0. We all know you can't read too much into results in pre-season.
Yeah, you tell yourself that.
But it's interesting because you look at the defence, the back four that started that game. You know, Aaron Wan-Bissaka, Victor Lindelof, Johnny Evans and young 17-year-old Harry Amas. So you kind of think, do they need those two additions? Well, yes, at the moment. But then you look at the players who could return next week ahead of the Community Shield. It's only really Diogo Dalot and Harry Maguire who was left out of that game with a precaution. Mazraoui, I think, is a must. We've spoken about him quite a lot on these shows, you know, especially if Aaron Wan-Bissaka is to seal a move to West Ham. We'll see how that progresses. But they definitely need depth in those fullback positions because Luke Shaw will still have his break from the Euros. We also know Tyrell Malacia is still coming back from his injury. I don't think he'll be expected to come back till later this year. So they absolutely need more depth at fullback. And I think in defence, they probably want someone to be a first choice centre-back partnership alongside Lisandro Martinez, who is due back at Carrington today. So how much do they need them? I'm not sure it's desperate just yet, but will it definitely help and will it better what they did last season? Absolutely.
Dan, is defence a priority then? It looks like it is, but do you think it is?
I think it's one of maybe two priorities that Manchester United have now. I think they're pretty well stocked up top and in the wide positions. They've got a lot of different options. Obviously, goalkeeper is an honour. It's that central midfield area combined with the full-back area, I would say, that would be my biggest concern. Kobbie Mainoo needs a central midfield partner that's more fit for purpose than the options that they have there at the moment. It's no coincidence that, you know, when it was weird with Amrabat because he didn't really do anything all season. Then towards the end of the season, he came in and he looked like the player that we thought Manchester United had signed in the first place. But I think Kobbie Mainoo benefited from having that type of midfielder next to him. Casemiro, he's been an excellent footballer all through his career. Has won everything you can win. A legend of the game, really. But he's not really fit for purpose in the Premier League from what we saw at the back end of last season. If Manchester United lining up with him in midfield, I think that puts a lot of onus on Kobbie Mainoo. And you look within that squad, McTominay, you know, will he be there? We don't know. I think personally he probably will, but his future, a bit like Conor Gallagher, seems to be up in the air every single window. So I think Mainoo is a definite. He's in that first team. He's in that first 11. It's that option alongside him at the moment. I think with Manchester United, it's unclear who that option is, and I think they need to do business there.
Well, dialogue remains open with Fulham over the sale of midfielder Scott McTominay. Fulham went back in with an improved offer. It was worth £20 million. It is understood to fall short of United's valuation, though. Dan, do you see this deal being done, McTominay to Fulham? Again, we've been talking about it for a little while. If the two clubs can meet in the middle, then will he be a Fulham player, do you think?
Yeah, potentially. I think, first of all, as we've been talking about on these shows, Manchester United need to sell before they bring in any of these players as well. I think Scott McTominay, especially, you look at him, we all know the PSR rules in terms of selling homegrown players, obviously improves the flexibility in the market. So if Scott McTominay was to leave, coming through the United Academy, it would probably help them reinforce potentially two areas, depending on how they spend that money. I think perhaps as well, for McTominay, you know, I think we're getting to a similar situation as Conor Gallagher to an extent of he'll be seeing his name starting to be linked in consistent windows now. And I think he'll also get to a point where he's thinking, I just want to play consistent football, first team football every single week. I don't want to necessarily worry, will I be left out every single week, especially with United having so many options in that position with Mason Mount now back fit, Christian Eriksen still there, and Kobbie Mainoo, the emergence of him in the last 12 months or so. So I think, similar to Gallagher, this is going to be, I think, a lot down to Scott McTominay's preference, what his motivation is. I think for Fulham, it could be really exciting.
I just think if I'm McTominay, I think, well, they tried to shift me a year ago. It didn't happen. And then I played a lot of games for Manchester United, the club that I loved last season, and played a big part in maybe most of the good that Manchester United did last season. Scored a lot of goals. And, you know, when he started, he was an effective player for them. If I'm Scott McTominay, I look at the midfield options at the moment and think, well, if we don't buy anyone, I'm arguably the best option next to Kobbie Mainoo. I'll play plenty of games. So if I'm Scott McTominay, I'd back myself and think, I love this club. I want to play for these fans. I want to play for this club. I'm going to stay. I don't need to go.
I think the maybe predicament with Scott McTominay at United is, I think we're still very unsure where his best position in the system is. You know, when United play 4-2, kind of 3-1 basically with the 10 and 2 sitting midfielders, I think we find, is he best next to Kobbie Mainoo in a deeper position? Does he have the technical ability to really dictate a game next to someone like Mainoo? We know he can make late runs and score late goals, but he's never going to get into the side ahead of Bruno Fernandes at 10. So I agree with you, but I also think for him, where does he fit into the team on a consistent basis? I don't think they've necessarily found that just yet.
Where do you think his best position is then?
Ooh, you know what? I would have said last
Eric
season.
Ten Hag know.
I would have said last season as a striker, to be honest, because he came through the United academy as a striker, and of course he scored so many important goals. I still think probably as a box-to-box midfielder next to someone like, say, Kobbie Mainoo if he's sitting, or Casemiro, but I'm not sure how realistic that is if Mainoo's playing next to Casemiro, or what the best combination is in that midfield.
Yeah. Well, PSG retain an interest in Man United's Jadon Sancho. Now, Sancho is thought to be open to a move, and personal terms are not expected to be a problem. United would want around £40 million for the player. I mean, the question is here, Dan, is Jadon Sancho staying, or is Jadon Sancho going?
Well, Ten Hag's talking positively about working with him. I mean, he's never going to come out and speak negatively about working with him, but all the noises is that, you know, they've patched it up, they want to work together. Sancho strikes me as the kind of character that will feel he's got something to prove at Manchester United. I think maybe not in the opening weeks of the season, but there's a pathway there for him to get into that team. There's, you know, the wide positions. Although Manchester United have got a lot of options, maybe other than Garnacho, I don't think anyone's locked down a place in that team at the moment. The problem they've got is that, you know, Rashford will expect to play, but him and Garnacho, they're both better down the left-hand side. Arguably, Sancho is better down the left-hand side, although he's played a lot of football on the right-hand side as well. I just kind of thinking maybe if they do sign a different right-back and Mazraoui comes in and he's more of a flying right-back than what they have, if Manchester United depend on how they operate tactically, maybe there is a position for Sancho there on the right where he can come into those areas, into the middle, which is what he likes doing, and kind of play between the lines and float around a little bit more. Doesn't have to hold width because Manchester United got a different right back. But I do think there's a pathway there for Jadon Sancho. We saw in the second half of the season when he's playing for Dortmund, when he's full of confidence and he's playing in a system that, you know, he believes in and that's an effective system. He's a really, really good footballer, really, really like dangerous footballer, fun to watch. So for Sancho, I think he's just got to get himself in the team. I think if he gets his head right, gets himself into the team, I think there's every chance he can stay there.
Well, you talk about getting himself in the team at the moment. I think another kind of challenge Eric Ten Hag has at the moment is who you play through the middle. You know, with the Community Shield again, just a week away, we saw against Liverpool, Sancho was deployed as a kind of false nine because of Rasmus Højlund's injury. Joshua Zirkzee, of course, at Carrington at the moment, building up his fitness. But I think against Manchester City at the moment, it looks like Sancho could play in that position. So perhaps he's going to be a short-term solution for now. Because as you mentioned out wide, there is a lot of depth out there. Ahmad's really impressed on the right wing. So at the moment, that is kind of his position. And Sancho's going to have to prove to Ten Hag that he fits somewhere in the system, but maybe just at the moment he's a solution that Ten Hag really needs going forward, because last season they really struggled to score goals, and maybe just for the first few weeks of the season while they're working out who's in form on the wings, Sancho can maybe work himself into the team.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see if Eric Ten Hag does opt for Jadon Sancho playing as a false nine. Obviously, so much has happened. Do you think too much has potentially happened between him and Eric Ten Hag and him and Manchester United for him to succeed?
Look, we know last year it was quite tense between the two, wasn't it? You know, Eric Ten Hag demanded an apology from Jadon Sancho. It seems over the off-season, whether that's come from above Eric Ten Hag, just telling him, look, you need to sort it out with Sancho and you both need to get on the same page. Because at the end of the day, as you mentioned, Dan, Sancho is really good at Dortmund last season. It seemed that he found his form once again, and has happened, is playing football, and that's the Sancho Manchester United signed a few years ago. I think hopefully not enough has happened that they can rebuild that, but I think it's really going to determine whether he stays or not. How much football can Ten Hag offer him, and where does he fit into this United side who really need to start challenging this season, I think.
I think Manchester United need to change. I think if Jadon Sancho is coming back into the same Manchester United that we've seen over the last year, where tactically, we're not really sure what they're doing. The distances look wrong. There's all these gaps. If you're not putting Jadon Sancho into an effective framework, you're not going to see a different Jadon Sancho from what we've seen at Manchester United previously. If Manchester United have changed and they managed to iron out some of the problems that they had last season, the new coaching setup's going to be interesting. I think that might help when you've got people coming in with fresh ideas. But I think for Sancho to be effective, I think Manchester United need to change from what they've been doing over the last 12 months.